UFOs have been something people have been interested in a long time, right? As long as we can remember seeing things in the sky that we can't immediately identify, that was the birth of the UFO. UFOs and aliens, I think if you take a look closely, they're two different things. UFOs are just what's in the sky. Mm-hmm. Aliens are life outside of our planet. It's a nuanced difference, but it's still a difference. The reason people are obsessed with UFOs is because people don't like, cognitively, human beings don't like an open loop in their reasoning process. You don't like it, I don't like it. It's the reason that television series always end on a cliffhanger. It's the reason that books end on cliffhangers. It's the reason that you read emails from email marketers and they always tell you what they're going to tell you on the next email, right? The human brain doesn't like an open loop. We like a closed loop. We like closure. So when there's an open loop, we get fixated on it. So the idea of this mystery of what's in the sky, we get naturally fixated on what could that be? Whether we want to or not, we start theorizing. Could it be this? Could it be that? Could it be this? We're trying to close the loop cognitively. That's what drives us compulsively with UFOs. What drives us compulsively with aliens is actually a question of how human beings, how we relate to mortality. You're going to die someday. Mm-hmm. I'm going to die someday. Right now in our 40s, where it's more real to us than it was in our 20s, when we probably both thought we were impervious. But imagine how we're going to feel when we're 60. Imagine how we're going to feel when we're 80, right? The closer you get to death, the more intense your questions start to become about, is there life after death? Is there more after death? Am I really just a pile of a functioning like biological system and then I'm going to die? My system's going to stop working and I'm just going to be dust? Is that really all there is to it? Or is there more? And that question of is there more is what really drives our fixation with alien life. Because what if there is life outside of Earth? What if when we die, our spirits go somewhere outside of Earth? What if there's some technology out there that these advanced creatures may have that could help me prolong my life, right? What if there's some great mystery that I haven't discovered in my 65 years of existence because I'm bored with everything of life, and now the only thing that's new and unknown to me is this idea of alien life. So the question of aliens is really intricately connected with the human existence, with our mortality, right? So you can see that you can separate these two things. One is a question of mortality, one is an open loop of the mysteries of what's going on in the sky. Now, the reason that these two things have always been around, but they've become so intensely mainstream, is because of the UAP report that the government released, 2 years ago now? 2021, possibly 2022? The federal government finally released that they had been collecting information about UFOs and UAPs since the 1950s. Once we heard that the federal government, the CIA, the DIA, NSA, had been actively running intelligence operations against Russia, for crying out loud, to try to collect information about UFOs and UAPs. Now, all of a sudden, what that did is it lended government credibility to these two open loops that we've been suffering from for so long, which now made it so that maybe in secret you thought they were aliens, but you never talked about it with your friends, or maybe in secret you thought they were UFOs, but you never mentioned it to your wife. Now all of a sudden the government's talking about it. So now everybody can talk about it, which opens up the conversation to everybody who has an opinion, right? And there is real evidence out there that speaks to unidentified aerial phenomenon, and that speaks to things in the sky that nobody can describe. And then you've got the footage from the 2007, the Nimitz and the F-18s that were tracking multiple aerial vehicles that they couldn't describe and they couldn't define. Like there's a lot of moving parts here that have now made it so that these two natural questions that all human beings have now become so mainstream. We can talk and speculate all we want openly now without having to worry about anybody calling us crazy.
Do you have any theories on what these are?
So I do, actually. So I was mentioning to you, I actually just finished shooting on a new television show. And I can't speak about many details, but the show was for a mainstream cable channel, and it was an investigation into the relationship between, potential government cover-ups, potential government secrets, and what is going on that could help describe or explain some of these phenomenon that people have been seeing, whether it's phenomenon in the sky or phenomenon on the ground or phenomenon that people experience physiologically, right? Is there a connection there? And when I get releases to talk about the show, I'm happy to share it all with you. But the point was, we got to actually investigate these questions. We got to look at data. We got to travel. We got to do some experiments to see if we could understand more about what is actually happening with UAP, UFO phenomenon, and how does it relate to the government, right? The U.S. government specifically. What I've landed on is a couple of things. So first, there is absolutely classified information that that's not being shared with us. And that sucks, because without that information, we don't have all the information. We can't make a sound conclusion for ourselves. So there's absolutely some element that's being controlled by the government. That doesn't mean that it's alien tech being controlled by the government. It just means that some bean counter somewhere has chosen these 15 reports to not be shared publicly. Who knows what they say? But for sure, there's some element where we're not being told all the facts the government has. On top of that, you've got real national security concerns. We are trying to develop new weapons all the time, new aircraft, new missile delivery systems, technology that we can't even fathom yet, right? Maybe there's hovercraft technology. Maybe there's, who knows, teleporting technology. There's actual national security secrets that should be protected, which is different than the information that doesn't need to be protected, but they're protecting it anyways. But between the government secrets that should be there and the government secrets that don't need to be there, there's a lot of empty holes in our understanding. So in my experience, I've seen strange lights in the sky. We've gone to some of the areas out there where people have reported UFO sightings, historic repeat UFO sightings. I've seen some very strange lights in the sky. I've seen triangle patterns. I've seen lights that jump from place to place. I mean, I've literally traveled, investigated, and seen these things, and I have no explanation for what they are. But they're happening in the sky, in certain places, at high altitude.
Where are you seeing these at?
The Southwest, primarily. If you're looking in the skies over Nevada, Arizona, Colorado, that's a really concentrated area there at the Four Corners, Utah. That's an area where there's a ton of concentrated just strangeness, right? That's also an area that's rife with government experimentation. That's where we have all of our experimental flight zones. That's where you have huge areas of commercial air traffic that go through there. Plus, it's wide open, beautiful, clear sky. You can actually see satellites from Earth when you look up in an empty, dark sky. It's incredible what you can see in a normal sky. Most people don't take the time to look up. Most people who do look up, they don't get that kind of a dark sky. They get a sky with a lot of light pollution because they live in or near a city. So you might see 15 or 50 stars, but you don't see the Milky Way. When you see the Milky Way, you see all sorts of things moving in the sky that you never would have imagined you would see. And part of the reason is because so many more people are putting up satellites now. You've got SpaceX puts up satellites, governments put up satellites, commercial entities across the world put up satellites. I mean, for crying out loud, Etisalat, which is a French communications company, Etisalat puts up satellites on an almost monthly basis, building a network of satellite-based cellular communication that they use around the world commercially, right? So there's so much in the sky, people see it all the time. And we don't know what we're looking at. It doesn't pop up on a flight tracker. Nobody announced that they're going to put something in the sky. You just start to see it. Now, a satellite looks pretty clear, right? It's a straight line. It moves at a steady speed, starts in one place, ends in another place. But the stuff that's up there isn't always a satellite. I've seen strange glowing orbs, like balls of light, that change direction. I have no idea what that is. Is that an airplane that
You've seen that?
Oh, yeah.
How many times?
Maybe 3, and only in the last 2 months while I've been shooting this show.
Wow.
But what is it? Could it be like an alien aircraft? Maybe. It could also be a domestic aircraft that forgot to turn off its headlight. Probably not, but it could be. It could also be a natural phenomenon. I've learned about things like ball lightning. Have you ever heard of ball lightning?
No.
Lightning, the environmental conditions that create lightning can actually be created on a small microcosm and in a ball. So it's lightning in a ball. It just looks like a light in the middle of nowhere, floating. There's also pre-indicators of earthquakes. There's geological effects that happen that release energy, electromagnetic energy into the atmosphere. When the energy comes up from a fault line and comes in contact with certain conditions in the atmosphere, it creates lights in clouds, almost like a light switch in a cloud. And all of a sudden, the cloud is a light and floating, right? We know these things exist. They've been studied, they've been talked about, but they're not mainstream. So how many of the lights that people are seeing that are strange are these true geological or aerial phenomenon that can be explained, right? Unknown aerial phenomenon, UAP, versus known aerial phenomenon, KAP. Unless you know that ball lightning exists, you're not going to know what it looks like when you see it. So there's this subset of celestial things, satellites, that we understand. Then there's a subset of just unidentified domestic or unidentified commercial things like aircraft. And then you've got these natural phenomenon like ball lightning. Only after you've gotten through all 3 of those do you get to the really, really strange stuff. And I mean, that is stuff that I don't know whether or not I've even seen really, really strange stuff because there's so much going on in the sky.
Yeah.